Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the one and only Rock and Wrestling Podcast.
Everybody, welcome to this week's edition of the Rock and Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, Nick, as you saw and heard on the new intro music. I would love to give a shout out to my boys in It Lives, It Breathes. They're a badass heavy metal band, and they're kind of known on YouTube for doing these great wrestling covers of theme songs. So they're a badass band. I hit them up. They came up with that badass intro theme, kind of threw together some Shinsuke Nakamura, some Bobby Roode, some Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, Hulk Hogan. Came out really, really good. Go check those guys out. Check them out on YouTube. Check them out on Spotify. Great shit. They do these great killer heavy metal covers of wrestling themes, so definitely go check it out. Want to give a shout out for those guys for creating the theme song. Going to hear it every week on there. Obviously, now I'm from parts unknown, man. I'm halfway there to being a fucking wrestler. I got a fucking gimmick, man. Got to get on my next thing you know, be in the damn ring. First and foremost, I want to thank everybody for last week, putting up with kind of the audio issues. We had some cutout issues, kind of putting the mic where it goes and stuff. We had some issues, but thank you for everyone that listened. It was the Wrestlemania preview show. Sometimes that technical difficulties happen. I tried my best to try to get the volume boosted as best we could, but hey, lesson learned. So this week's episode, we've got Toy Called God. I went down last Friday night and sat down about 25 minutes with those guys, and I got Patrick, and I got the bass player, I got the singer. I gave them kind of nicknames. One was named Damien, so Damien Sandow I gave him, and they called him Buff, so Buff Bagwell. So I kind of gave them some wrestling nicknames, which is cool. They're really cool dudes, and they're actually kicking some serious ass out there, man. They're from being a local band in the scene, especially in the Bay Area. They kick some serious ass, and they really have done some great things touring and putting out some really, really good solid records. We talk a little bit about that. They got a new record coming out this summer that you definitely want to check out. A couple things here before we get rocking and rolling. I do apologize. I am a little congested. I've been fighting off a little bit of a cold here the last couple of days, so bear with me if you hear some issues there. I'm trying my best here. I want to make sure this episode drops as timely as always on a Wednesday. So bear with me on that. But a couple of other things I want to get into. Once again, make sure you follow me on Twitter, Nick's R&W Podcast. Go into Instagram, Nick's. It's not Nick's, it's Rock and Wrestling Podcast. Facebook, Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast. And Gmail, Rock and Wrestling Podcast at gmail.com. So definitely go and check all those out, retweet me, everything of such. Now, obviously, a lot of you are probably wondering, are we going to do a WrestleMania recap? Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Excuse me there as I cough, as I said, trying to fight off this cold I have. This episode's going to be a little bit different. We're going to do a little bit of rock and roll. We're going to do a little bit of wrestling, really work on Rock and Wrestling here, as that's the name of the podcast. I want to get into a little bit of Toy Called God here and a little bit of some other cool things going on in the rock and heavy metal world that I'm going to be partaking in. And then after the Toy Called God interview, we'll do a WrestleMania recap. I'm not going to go through every match and every card. Obviously, it was a 7-hour event, but I'm going to go through some of the big points, talk about kind of its week one, as you would say, of the NFL season. It's a reset now, so I'm going to kind of go through that after the interview with Toy Called God. But a couple of things that I want to chit-chat a little bit here about is I know I've got a lot of new listeners out there. Thank you for listening. And if you're not familiar with kind of how the format of the podcast works, is usually I give a little bit, 10, 15-minute intro just to kind of put some bows on last week's episode, promote. Once again, go buy yourself a Rock and Wrestling Podcast t-shirt, prowrestlingtees.com/Rock and Wrestling Podcast. Help a brother out. Do a little preview. We'll do an interview, and then sometimes I wrap that interview up depending on how long that interview is. But this week we're going to kind of do a two-parter in one episode, do a little rock and roll talk, and then a little bit of wrestling talk. Excuse me once again. Sorry about that. So really what I want to talk about first is I want to do a little preview is one of my all-time favorite bands. And if you listened a few episodes back, I believe it was episode 4, I did my top 10 albums of all time. But one of my favorite bands of all time, I think this will be like the 15th or 16th time I've seen them, is Steel Panther. And Steel Panther is going to be at Ace of Spades in Sacramento this Friday night. I've got a VIP pass, going to meet them again for the second time. They're just a really, really good, solid, fun band. It's one of those bands where you got to get together with the boys, get some drinks, whether you're getting some beers, you're getting some shots, some mixed drinks, and just have a good time. They're a funny-ass band. Their songs are great. Everything about Steel Panther, to me, is so damn fun. I've had the most fun I've ever had at a concert is at Steel Panther, so I'm excited to see them at Ace of Spades. Headlining show, got the VIP meet and greet. So I'm really, really excited about that. I'm going to give a little bit of a recap on that next week, kind of the VIP experience and the whole show. They're doing something cool. They kind of took this idea from Motley Crue. Motley Crue, in I think 2011, went out on tour, and they had the fans vote on the set list. Well, Steel Panther expanded on that and are having each town vote on what songs they want to play. So you have to go online and vote on which songs you want them to play. So I've been voting on some songs I want them to play. Really, really cool. They even threw like a bunch of covers in there for them to play. So really cool. I'm excited for this show on Friday night. It's going to be a good time. I'm probably going to have a hangover on Saturday, but hey, that's the way it goes when you go to Steel Panther. Next thing I want a little preview is Aftershock Festival here in Sacramento. They just released the lineup. Tickets went on. Tickets go on sale this Friday. But I just got mine on pre-sale. If you want a pre-sale code, hit me up on Twitter, hit me on an Instagram, Facebook, email me, and I'll help you out. Maybe I'll throw the pre-sale code. But they got some solid bands this year. I'm really excited. It looks like there's going to be a really good lineup. I thought last year was kind of mediocre. There were some good bands like Steel Panther and Fozzy and Ozzy Osbourne were good. But overall, I think really this year is a solid. I mean, something from, System of a Down is one of the headliners. I mean, that's crazy. I've never seen them, so I'm excited to see that. Deftones, I'm not a big fan of them. But Alice in Chains, never seen Alice in Chains. Really, really going to be awesome to see them, even though it's not the original lineup. And I thought that was kind of coincidence, talking a little bit of Alice in Chains, because with Toy Called God, we talked a lot about Alice in Chains. Godsmack, Shinedown, Slash, my favorite guitar player. Excited to see him back out on the road with Miles Kennedy and the Conspirators. Absolutely love that band, so I'm real excited to see them. Seether's a great band. Bullet for My Valentine I haven't seen in quite some time. I love them. Really, really good band. Black Veil Brides has much improved. I'm excited to see them. Seven Dust, Guar. Really, really good solid lineup. So it's going to be interesting here, and I'll definitely do a full recap. Hopefully, if we blow up this podcast, I get some of these guys on when they come into town for the Aftershock Festival, and we can really rock and roll and get some killer guests up on here. But I just wanted to give a little preview of Steel Panther, give a little preview of Aftershock. That's kind of what's going on in the rock world. Obviously, we'll do kind of a WrestleMania recap here on the other side of the Toy Called God interview. So coming up next shortly will be Toy Called God, Patrick, Damien, and Buff from Toy Called God. It's going to be really, really cool for you guys to hear this interview. I was excited. I will apologize in advance. You get some background noise. I went down to the local venue and there was some music playing, but it did come out. You're able to hear everything, so just apologize in advance. But once again, make sure you check us out on Twitter, Nick's R&W Podcast, Instagram, Rock and Wrestling Podcast, Facebook, Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast, Gmail, Rock and Wrestling Podcast at gmail.com. Go get your official t-shirts. Just got my long sleeve and tank top. Got my tank top ready to show the guns off for this summer. Go to prowrestlingtees.com/Rock and Wrestling Podcast store. Get your pro wrestling tees. Once again, I'll throw this out there. If you give me a review on iTunes, I will hook you up with a free shirt. We had a winner last week, Jeremy. Thank you for listening. There's a little shout out. He got one t-shirt. I will do it again this week. If you give me a review on iTunes, you will get a free shirt. So make sure you do that. Coming up on the other side, Toy Called God.
All right, I'm here with Patrick, Damien Sandow, I'm going to call you, and Buff, because his name's Marcus, so he's Buff Bagwell.
Right on. How you doing, Nick?
Good, I'm doing good. How about yourself?
We're doing great. Happy to be here on the Y tonight.
On the Y, yes. I played here a couple times. A little hard to hear, but...
Oh, dude. I love the small rooms because the sound is right back on top of you immediately. You know what you're getting, right?
Yeah.
And it's real intimate and cozy. And so you can see their beady little eyes from the stage.
It's very cozy and intimate. I think somebody grabbed my balls when I was here one time.
That sounds fun.
Yeah.
Watch out for ball grabbers tonight, gang.
Yeah.
Were they in your band, though?
What?
Were they in your band?
Well,
Let's interview him. This will be more
yeah,
fun.
it could be more productive that way. There's a good chance. I mean, we had a 90% male following, so there's a good chance it was one of the guys in the band. I don't know.
Oh, my.
He's like, I'm done. Interview's over. So I'll start off a little bit, just tell a little bit the history of like Toy Called God, how it kind of got started, and because I know you've been through different members, different things, but you've been around for.
Oh yeah. So 8 years ago, there was this cat who was delivering a FedEx package to this guy's house who was a drummer. They knocked on the door. They said, "Hey, do you want to jam?" The other guy's like, "Sure," and so they jammed. Then the drummer's brother's a singer, and they decided they were going to put an ad on Craigslist. And so I responded to the ad. I went over there, I went and I listened, and I'm like, there's some potential here. I went and I bought a PA the next day. We put an ad up for the bass player, and Toy Called God was born. Here we are 8 years later, 2 singers, 2 bass players, 10 drummers, and me.
Holy shit, that's a lot.
So yeah, we've had some rollover, but we're 4 albums deep and we can't stop now because fucking money, man.
Fuck yeah, that's why I stopped, because I was paying too much damn money.
It happens, but you have to invest in yourself and believe in yourself if you're really trying to do this. And so for me, I'd be doing it anyway, whether it was with my great friends that I have now or with the guys from before. I'd be doing it anyway. So here I am.
All right, so let's start off with Damien Sandow. How did he come into the picture here?
Mutual friend, actually, former drummer for Toy Called God, John Riggs, is playing. And they were shooting the video for Only One Menace in downtown Antioch. And John hit me up, was like, "Hey, you want to be in the video?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. What the fuck, why not?" And so he brought me downtown. I met Patrick for the first time and went down to the liquor store, got a couple beers, missed the shoot, ended up getting drunk, going home later, la-da-da-da. Didn't see Patrick for a while after that. Then one day he hits me up out of the blue and was like, "Hey, we're getting ready to go on the road. I need a fill-in guy." And I was like, "Sure, what the hell?" So I went on about a two-week run with them. And back in 2015, and did the run with them, came back, did a couple fill-in gigs around the Bay, and then they're getting ready for another tour, and Patrick hit me up and was like, "Hey, man, you want the gig? Go out on tour?" I was like, "Fuck yeah, I'm here." So here I am now, almost 2 years later, almost 3 years later
yeah.
now. Just got finished track and bass on my first Toy Called God album, and yeah, just getting ready to throw it down tonight with my boys.
Awesome. Let's go to Buff. So
That is me.
That's me.
How did you get into Toy Called God? So
I was at work procrastinating and not doing my job and trolling on Craigslist and saw an ad for, singer wanted, and I've been looking to get back into music. And sent a message to the guy. He said, "Hey, check out these samples." Heard the samples, was blown away. I thought, you know what? There's really something there. I think I could bring something with my voice. So came over. It happened to be right down the street from where I worked at the time, and it's all history from there.
Awesome. Good. So let's talk a little bit musically, stylistically, what Toy Called God is. I mean, you're the founder, so.
So when we started, we had a different singer, and he had kind of a really Phil Anselmo-like sound. And so we kind of wrote the songs, to kind of fit his feel and his voice. Over the course of time, with changes in personnel, Buff here has a way different style. And so now we write the songs to tailor fit to Buff, of course. And Buff has made the old stuff his own. Stylistically now, I would say it's a cross like Soundgarden meets Alice in Chains meets Pantera. There's still that edge there.
I was gonna say you guys sound like, because I've listened to some of the like Alice in Chains was the biggest thing that I grabbed out of everything. Like all through like the records, I was like, there's definitely Alice in Chains through all of this.
Yeah, that's probably the constant in the style. I'm a huge fan of Jerry Cantrell.
Jerry Cantrell's, man, that guy's good.
Dude, sick.
And also the thing about the whole evolution with Toy Called God, the first albums with the previous singer up to Buff now.
I feel like that's going to be like a credit on the record now.
People call me Slim, and so now he's Buff. We got Buff and Slim. This is like great.
See, my wrestling knowledge came in somehow.
Buff forever.
He's Buff Bagwell. So if this doesn't work out, you can be Buff the stuff. So then when your singing career goes south and your wrestling career goes south, you can do like him and become a male gigolo. So it works out perfectly.
Buff stuff.
And the future wife's over there going, no.
Or she's plotting like he could make a lot of money. One of the two.
Well, she might pimp that ass.
Yeah.
Webcam purchase. Look it up on the phone.
Yeah. She's like, I'm on Craigslist right now. He's like, I got into this band Craigslist. Now I'm going to get out of it.
Right. But they took the personal ads down, so.
I know a guy. I know a guy. I cut you off on the train of thought there.
Oh, the evolution.
The evolution.
The evolution of sound, everything. Even with different singers and personnel changes, there's still that underlining tone, which is Toy Called God. And it's just how the songs are structured, just how they're written. There's maybe a different feel now with different members, but it's the way I kind of refer to it is when we were doing the first writing the album, it's that classic Coke recipe. We kind of approached the new album at first with this new way of writing, and it didn't have that oomph to it, that drive, that really, the Toy Called God feel. And so I was like, told Patrick, get that classic Coke recipe back, New Coke, fuck New Coke, it's a classic Coke. Boom.
We tossed 5 songs in the trash, and then I sat down with a guitar for a few days, and now we have all new trash.
So is that how the writing process works? Then you are the main writer?
Me and Buff, I'll sit down and play some guitar for a couple days, and then Buff will come over, and me and Buff will hammer on the riffs I have. And Buff's an aspiring guitar player too, so every once in a while he'll whip out a riff, and I'll say, hey, I can steal that. And so then I rip it off, make it my own, give it that Toy Called God, and then we do our thing, we write some words up, and boom, on fire. Buff stuff.
And then he tries like hell to get us to interpret what he's trying to think of.
Yeah.
He'll show us a riff, and he's got this idea in his head.
So I'm a guitar player too. Let me see if I can take a stab at this, because I would always do this. I'd be like, Night Train by Guns N' Roses? Yeah, I want to do that, but different. You get the gist?
Kinda.
Yeah.
I want this to be Man in the Box, but different.
So like if the drummer's playing a beat, I don't speak drummer. And so I have to describe what I want him to do, and sometimes there's the
rattlesnake.
Right, the rattlesnake thing. So sometimes I have to work around the communication issue, or have one of the guys help explain it, because they understand what I'm trying to say, but I can't word it, so they word it, and then we all work it out eventually.
Yeah. Well, because I'd be the same way when I'd write shit. They'd be like, this isn't like 4/4 or anything. I'd be like, I don't know, just figure it out. Like,
Well, so, play the kick and then go to the roll, or hit it on the offbeat, or do a hardcore type beat instead of, like, say, a punk beat. And so that stuff I can do. But every once in a while, there's something that I want to communicate and I just can't. And so the real challenge then becomes getting over my own stupidity and frustration to get the point to those guys so they can go, that's what he meant.
And what he meant was just switch up the ride and the snare. That's all it was. Just the ride and the snare.
Yeah, that thing there. Can you play that?
Well, everything pretty much came together very well. He showed us riff, and I think we all had the feel down for what was wanted. There's just a few things, just like not speaking drummer. Like you said, it's just like, and it's like you can see it. He's like, poor Jacob is like, Patrick's gonna rip his fucking head off. And but he's very calm. But it's just like, no, I want you. No, just what the fuck, And men,
So
Jacob
you
look at it like, what does he want?
He'll be like, yes. He'll be like, that's what he was doing.
Yeah. And then it's all good. And then we go to the studio, and all that shit goes out the window anyway.
So is it the same communication between the bass player and the guitar player? Because I know like some guys I've written with, it'll be like, hey, how's the riff go? Do. Or do you guys communicate like through theory, like actual? Hey, this is an E, this is a G. Do you guys?
A little bit of both.
A little bit of both.
We've played together so much now, like me and Slim, we're on the same page. Like, I know it's coming before he does it. Marcus is the same way. We've done a lot of stuff with Marcus, so we can anticipate when Marcus is going to hold a note, flex on the note, or cut it short, and then we match to accompaniment.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So you guys mentioned you're in the middle of recording your fourth album here. So
Yeah,
how's
Social Evangelism, due out this summer.
this summer? So how's that process going? Close.
All the tracking's done, so it's in mix down right now, and then it'll go to mastering. We anticipate hearing rough mixes of tracks here in the next 2 weeks. So we're looking to get it wrapped up, mastering and mixing wise, and then we're looking for a tour this summer or fall.
Awesome. Because I know you guys, because I follow you on Facebook, and your Facebook posts crack me up, which we'll get into in a
I'm a
minute.
crazy bastard that way.
So when obviously you guys aren't necessarily, are you signed to anything?
No, we're actually rolling independent. We have a management team that we have do some of our legwork, and then I'm really like the guy, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't happen with us till it hits here first, and then I disseminate it to the fellas, and then we all decide on it, and then I spit it back at people.
Because I know I've seen some of your tours, and you do it all yourself, right? Which can be a little bit
Hustling, brother.
Yeah. So as we were talking off air about wrestling here, which
Yeah.
obviously I'm a wrestling freak, and I gave you all wrestling nicknames. So I just wanted to get a little bit into that, because I think if I'm ever a wrestler, I'm stealing your guys' music, because I think you guys could have great entrance music.
I wouldn't say steal your music around this guy.
License.
I would license the music and help you guys out and go, dude, I'm stealing these guys. There it is again. License this music, because it's heavy shit, and it would work.
There's a few songs that I really think would be sweet for that. Like, there's a song on our first record called Self-Destructive that, man, it's the perfect MMA intro song. It's all, I'm fearless, and all this.
Yeah.
It's so perfect for that. I wouldn't be mad if any wrestler, MMA star, supercross biker, what the fuck ever, if they wanted that as intro music, we could work something out. Hit me up, I'll license that shit in a second.
Yeah, I'll pimp it out to all the guys. Here, check this out. So along those same kind of lines, I like to hear everybody's like musical background, favorite bands, and like that. So like obviously, Alice in Chains, Pantera-ish is kind of where you get.
Yeah, I come up, in a classic rock house, but there was a lot of Motown and shit going on too. And then as I grew up, it was Motley Crue, then it was Metallica, then it was Pantera and Megadeth and Testament. And everybody else was in their brother's mother or whatever. A lot of Alice in Chains, a lot of Godsmack. And then everything else that becomes the TCG mix comes from these guys.
So what about?
It started real early age, listening to what my mom listened to, like all the classics, Doors, Janis Joplin, Cream, everybody, and then, the 80s came around and she was listening to Joan Jett and Blackheart stuff, and so I loved that. I always had this rock and roll feel that I loved, playing air guitar at 5 years old.
And then you realize you didn't like getting women, so I'll play bass.
Two girls
Oh,
having a
man, yeah, right? Oh, God. I had no game anyway, so my wife found me. I got lucky. right?
I had to give him shit because I'm like, anytime I play with the bass player, I'm like, hey, I got to give him shit.
Well, I'm skinny, so it's kind of hard to hit me. But, you know, and it wasn't until junior high, you know, that the reality of actually playing something came around. And a buddy was like, hey, you want to play bass? And I was like, sure. Had no fucking clue what a bass was. Obviously, I thought, you know, the guy that did the solos. Nope.
Nope.
You know, the one that got all the chicks.
It's the one that nobody's going to hear.
I was like, God damn it.
I think that's the beautiful part, though, is you're the bass player, so if you fuck up, nobody really knows.
But
Yes, but the band knows, but everybody out in the crowd's going to be like, we don't know.
you feel it, you know. It's like
Yeah.
I say, you hear the guitar player, but you feel the bass. You know, if something's wrong, you'll know. But I mean, I love classical music. I love classic rock, but metal. It's always been about metal, you know, for me. So.
Well, we heard a lot of Jerry Cantrell, who would be your
You know, as far as bass players, Cliff Burton, Steve Harris, Steve DiGiorgio, Geezer Butler, John Paul Jones.
Just
it depends
countless.
on genre, you know.
Yeah.
So Victor Wooten, Steve Bailey. You know, I'm gonna give you a Marcus now. Oh, excuse me, Buff.
Buff. I feel like he's going,
Yes. So, what were we talking? Musical influences?
yeah.
He's a big Cannibal Corpse fan.
Is this Cannibal Corpse?
No. So for me, it's Soundgarden. The Who is a big one for me. I always come back to. The Beach Boys are my favorite band of all time, which is fun when we play metal music, but it's true. Biggest inspirations, definitely Chris Cornell. I would like to think I sound a little like him. I try to steal things. Right.
You license his vocal style.
License, excuse me. But some of my other favorite stuff, I mean, Metallica, just like everyone else, Pantera, so a lot of that stuff. My first band I ever really loved was Journey, so big shocker.
So along those lines, because you guys are, as an independent, I know you've been around and been successful. What has been some of the keys to keeping one, obviously a band like this together for so long? And
Well, so the things that you need most are want to. I can put everybody in a position to succeed, but if nobody has the want to, it doesn't matter. You have to have the want to first. You got to have that drive. You got to have that fire, determination. Be hungry, be humble, work your ass off, and invest in yourself. Don't be cheap with your audio or your video. You got one chance to make that impression. Make it count. If you spend $500, it's going to sound like $500. So don't be cheap with your product. Be determined. And yeah, don't cash in your short-term or long-term future because you want it right now. Nothing happens overnight. You don't wake up after one day of guitar playing and like wake up and become Van Halen tomorrow. It's a long, hard process. And then you tour the country, not the county. Because touring the county, that shit gets old. You can only do so much with that. So don't oversaturate your home market. Get out, do it, invest in yourself, believe in yourself, and chase that shit down.
so when you go in terms of tour the county, how often do you guys play out when you're not on tour? Do you like?
Locally in the Bay, we do like four shows a year. Sacramento, we generally do twice a year. So we don't want to oversaturate it. We want people to miss us. So when we come back, they're like, "Hey!" and then the room fills up. It's simple economics. The best way I ever heard it explained is, you can shear a sheep forever, but you can slaughter a sheep one time. So shear the sheep, make them miss you. Don't slaughter the sheep, because if you kill the audience, you got nothing.
Well, the bands that played.
Too much.
Too
They
much.
slaughter the sheep.
Yeah. How come people aren't coming to our shows? Well, you just played there
Because
last.
you just played here 83 times in 2 months. So yeah, that kind of shit.
So, along with those touring and you doing a lot, have you just made connections over the years to build
Oh man,
your?
yeah. Everywhere we go, we're all about hanging out in the crowd, making friends with everybody, meeting the sound guys, meeting the bands. Because down the road, at some point, that's all going to tie itself together, and that's all you can hope for, right?
Yeah.
Connections, good people, and then when you go back, they bring their friends, and then they bring their friends, and the next thing you know, yeah, they ask, when are you guys coming again? When are you guys coming again? That's the goal, right? To grow the sound everywhere. So hustle, and then keep going back.
Yeah, because I've seen like you guys got Texas or wherever. Like, when you guys coming back, I'm like, that's really impressive for just an independent band. And your production, your albums is really good for an independent band, which I much enjoy. Because, like, I hate when people are like, hey, go listen to my shit. And I'm like, this sounds like crap, but your guys is top notch.
So again, it's like I said, you have to invest in yourself and believe in yourself. Find a top flight producer that you can find. Pay whatever the cost is. Pay the guy. He fucking deserves it. Because if you want to sound like money, then you got to put some money in there. It's really that's what it is. Don't expect instant gratification and invest in yourself.
Yeah, because you guys, like, it's a solid sound. Because I, obviously, being in, like, the sax scene, so many people, check it out, and you just hear it, and you're like, how much you pay for this? Oh, we got a deal, dude. Like, you shouldn't probably
You got to deal with your friend's buddy in his garage on the weekend.
Yeah.
Congratulations, it sounds like that.
Yeah. Compared to, like, top flight production.
Get it, dude. There's so many good producers in the Sac and Bay area. If you're not finding those guys, you're doing yourself wrong.
So have you gone with the same producer for each album?
We've had the same guy for everything. I have a producer I love. We have a videographer that we love to use, and we roll those two guys every time we do something because they know us, we know them, we know the product we're getting. They get where we're trying to go. They get our artistic direction, and so it would be hard for me to go somewhere else at this point because the relationship has grown. We've grown together with those guys, and they've been a huge part of our recipe. We're the four dudes, but those other two dudes, the producer and the videographer, they've been in the band almost as long as I have. So.
Yeah, so because it's great stuff. I really enjoy it.
Thank you.
It's good. So obviously we talked about kind of the beginnings, but like obviously it's very Alice in Changey. It's newer sounding.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought? Because I know a lot of bands are like, we gotta sound newer. Do you just stick with the same?
We just write what we write.
You write what you write.
We don't. I mean,
you don't look at what's popular and go, hey, we need to sound like that.
Chasing trends isn't healthy. It's cool to be informed and to know what trends are happening, but you still have to write who you are. The best songs are the songs that are not contrived or fake. The ones that people can hear and instantly feel that shit is real and genuine. That moment happened to somebody in that band. Oh my Christ. And so we try to tap into that. But these guys could talk about it just as much as I can.
Yeah.
The type of there's trendy music that would change with the times, but there's always going to be that, like I said, that type of music that's written from the heart and soul, whether it be rock and roll, metal, country. You can feel when someone is really taking the time and effort, not to sound like something. You may sift through a bunch of shit to find the most ones with most potential for someone to buy, radio airplay, or whatever. But we're not writing towards anything. We're just writing how we write. And that's the best type of music, like you said, is the type you can feel.
Yeah, just the feel off of it.
Well, and I kind of think that the songs that really, really catch and songs that really, really stick with you, they always cycle back to certain things, whether they're written in the 70s or whether they're songs that are popular now. Even if it's something someone's going like, oh man, let's try to do that. It's like, I mean, that was like a song in the 60s, or like, oh, that vocal hook, it's something similar to what you've heard before. So, and I think one of the best things that's happened to music lately, and some people might hate me for it, but it's okay, but just high production values is people trying to recapture old styles of music, which is well and great, but once you plug in the modern production values, it takes on a whole new art form. So it's kind of a loss to try to copy something that was done in 1982 when it's not going to sound the same.
Yeah, you're trying to sound like Motley Crue and it's 2018.
Exactly.
It won't work.
You gotta be you.
Yeah.
But before you do anything else, you have to be who you are. Everything else is secondary.
Yeah. So I know you guys want to get going here because want to wrap it up shortly or however long we need to go, but. It's getting loud in here, so I want to cut it here before the audio's so shit. You're like, dude, we can't even hear ourselves on the fucking interview.
Yeah.
So,
right?
real quickly, favorite song to play live, each one of you.
Oh, Addiction. I really love that. Or Wild Child. Yeah.
The Addiction, it's just stomping, bass, everything, that, and Only One Menace.
So Addiction's also on my list, but Patrick knows for me, Voodoo's on there. And I think a couple of these new songs are going to be a lot of fun. Nothing But a Lie specifically.
So real quickly, where can we find Toy Called God? All of that.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
We are like the downloadable herpes of the internet. You can find us on Spotify, Pandora, Amazon, iTunes, toycalledgodband.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Everywhere you can find a band, be it audio or visual or whatever, you'll find us. Hit our YouTube. Google it, and you will find it.
Okay, awesome. Any last things before we wrap up
If
here?
you're listening to this and you're in the Concord, California, East Bay area, June 2nd, come see Toy Called God at Vinny's with The Ghost Next Door. That'll be a good time. And then look for our new album, Social Evangelism, this summer, fall, something like that.
And then a tour, obviously, to follow
And then
after.
a tour to follow, of course.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate you guys coming on again. Thank
Nick,
you.
we appreciate you having us. Thank you so very much.
Yes, thank you.
All right, I want to thank again Toy Called God for coming on the show today. Look for their new album coming out sometime in the summer, fall. Social Evangelism should be out sometime in there. Go check out their 3 previous albums as well. Great dudes, great live band. They really wreck some necks out there. Kind of got a groove metal thing going on with them, so they're definitely a good band. Check them out if you will. Once again, remember, check out the Twitter, Nick's R&W Podcast, Instagram, Rock and Wrestling Podcast, Facebook, Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast, Gmail, rockandwrestlingpodcast.com. Get your t-shirts, prowrestlingtees.com/ Rock and Wrestling Podcast store. Do that for me. If you go on and put a review on iTunes, I'll hook you up with a free shirt. All right, so we're on the second half of the show here. If this was a radio show, that would have been our first hour. This is what you could say if this was a radio show, that'd be our second hour. We're going to do a little WrestleMania recap. First and foremost, I want to thank my boys at Official Wrestling 316. Great correspondence. They were down there in New Orleans this weekend. They were tweeting me pictures. They were sending kind of reports about who was over, some of the cool things. They were at Supercard of Honor on Saturday night while I was watching NXT, so it kind of gives me a full kind of recap and everything like that, so I could retweet you guys some of the pictures, what was going on, who's really over, some of the cool stuff that goes on. I went to WrestleMania in 2015. It's a hell of an experience. I've already got my money saved up. I will definitely be there in 2019 in the New York, New Jersey area, hopefully getting some big wrestling guests on. But let's do a little WrestleMania recap. Before we really get into everything, I just want to say that I thoroughly enjoyed the whole WrestleMania weekend, from the Hall of Fame to hearing Goldberg's speech, the Dudley Boys, Kid Rock, Mark Henry. I felt it was really good, and NXT was amazing. I'm going to get into a little bit of NXT stuff here. First, let's go ahead and start with NXT TakeOver. I mean, I didn't do a preview show of that, but man, that's probably the best NXT TakeOver I've ever seen. That ladder match that they started off with, which was Adam Cole, the Velveteen Dream, Killian Dane, Lars Sullivan, Ricochet, and I'm missing one more. I'm drawing a blank there on who's the sixth guy in there. But wow, for the new NXT North American title, wow, what a match. Ricochet is a fucking phenomenal, man. His flips, everything, the way he sells, unbelievable. Really enjoyed that whole spectacle. That was great. I thought that was probably the best match of the whole weekend, really. I thought that match was amazing. The whole NXT card was great. I mean, the women's title was a little flat, but, that's going to happen after such a hot start. The Roderick Strong turn and joining Undisputed Era was incredible. I think Roderick Strong is a great talent, so I really am glad to see maybe he's going to get a push there. Aleister Black winning the NXT title, I thought was amazing. Definitely deserved it. Love that guy. And then the Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano non-unsanctioned match was fucking unbelievable. I mean, that was old school 1980s NWA storytelling, and it was phenomenal. I mean, some of the spots, the powerbomb on the concrete, using the knee brace to make Ciampa tap out. I mean, everything. There were so many false finishes. You didn't know who was going to win. You thought Gargano might lose because he's going to get called to the main roster. But phenomenal NXT TakeOver. I really enjoyed myself there. Excuse me again. One of the things I tried to do this weekend, and I mentioned it on Twitter on Monday, was This was the biggest wrestling weekend of the year, and I didn't live tweet like I've been doing on Raw and SmackDown because I just wanted to take the social media out of it and just enjoy what pro wrestling is, especially enjoy. And I really didn't want to tweet during WrestleMania because I knew it was a long show. I just wanted to enjoy for what it was. And as I get into kind of some recap, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, there were some low spots. That's going to happen in a 7-hour show. But I thought it was absolutely phenomenal. I think this was a top 5 WrestleMania, in my opinion, of all time. And it's definitely one of the better WrestleManias in the last couple of years. I thought it was better than last year's 33. Definitely better than 32. 31's always going to have a special place in my heart since Sting wrestled there. I got to meet Sting that weekend, and I was there for that. But always going to be, tough to top that. I thought it was better than, 30, definitely better than 29, 28, 27. So, I mean, it definitely was phenomenal. Excuse me, once again, like I said, fighting off a cold, trying my best here to make sure I give you quality product. So excuse for the coughs there and the congestion. But a couple of main things that I really wanted to take away here from WrestleMania, and then I'll recap a little bit of Raw and SmackDown the last couple of nights here, was, Ronda's debut. Ronda Rousey is a badass woman. And she can go in the octagon, and she can go in the wrestling ring, too. I mean, her debut was phenomenal. That was arguably the best match of the whole WrestleMania card. It had me entertained for the entire time. It was the longest match, and it was great. It seemed like they put all the spots in. It was great. Stephanie even did a good job, even though she's not a regular competitor. I thought she did an amazing job, selling for Ronda. Kurt Angle's beat up. He's had 3 or 4 neck surgeries in his career, and he's not 100%. He's not 2005, 2004 Kurt Angle, but a 70% Kurt Angle's better than most guys 100%. And Triple H is Triple H. So it was great. I mean, they teased, Ronda doing stuff to Triple H, and Stephanie always was trying to run around. She pulled Ronda off the ring apron. I mean, it was great stuff, And I apologize for that cough again. Sorry. But I thought Ronda's debut was absolutely phenomenal. I think she's going to be a big star. I definitely think the money match is going to be her and Charlotte down the road. Clearly, you can see that Ronda has what you would say it. And, she's like a natural, like Kurt Angle was. Just, an Olympic gold medalist coming from another sport, coming right in. And I think she's going to be phenomenal. And it was great to see her because you could see if there were any sloppy spots, it wasn't because of Ronda. It was, she's in a ring with Stephanie, an executive, not a regular wrestler. When Ronda gets in that ring with somebody that is a true wrestler, it's going to be incredible to see how well she can do. So I'm really, really excited about it. And I think Ronda's going to be a big, big star. I'm excited to see where they go with her in this next year and how much she can grow. There was a lot of negativity about, this and that. But after this, I think everyone, and Ronda's over. And then she did the whole thing where she put the armbar on Stephanie. Stephanie came out on Monday with like a broken arm, and then Ronda put it on her again. So, I mean, on Monday Night Raw. So Ronda is over, and Ronda is a badass chick, and I 100% loving her. She's going to be really good. When her and Charlotte finally meet, it's going to be a damn good match. Sorry again for the cough there. Next thing that I really had a big takeaway was Charlotte beating Asuka. On our preview show last week, if you didn't hear it, you can go back and listen. I did not see Asuka's streak ending. I really thought that Asuka would win the title here and then eventually go on and be undefeated, and they were going to have Ronda and Asuka a year later undefeated. Somebody's got to lose, but looks like Charlotte got the win there, and it was really shocking, and it was arguably, the two best matches of the night were between Charlotte and Asuka and the Ronda Rousey, Kurt Angle versus Stephanie McMahon and Triple H. I mean, it was that good, and I really enjoyed the match. The spot on the second rope where they did the flip was incredible. So Charlotte beating Asuka was a big, big shock, and I didn't see that coming. I think I'm going to talk a little bit about the Superstar shakeup. I think Asuka's still going to get her title run, but it's just not here at Mania. I think they're positioning Charlotte, and I'll talk about that here with the Carmella cash in a few minutes, that I think Charlotte's being positioned to go to Raw and we're going to get a year-long build of Charlotte and Ronda Rousey. We're going to keep them apart, and finally we're going to, I can see Charlotte being the champ and Ronda winning that Rumble next year, and we get Charlotte and Ronda Rousey at Mania, and I think that will be the 100% main event, the first time women have ever main evented a WrestleMania. I think it'll be next year, and I think that's what they're aiming for, and I definitely see that. The next thing that I really want to talk about was The Undertaker. A lot of people were kind of upset on what happened with The Undertaker, that it was such a short match, but I didn't give a shit. You could ask the people I was watching, my girlfriend, my brother, my parents. I was sitting there watching Mania, and when the gong hit and you saw Taker's hat and gloves in the ring, and then the lights went out and the music played and he came out, I popped, man. I was so pumped. It was great to see The Undertaker, and he looked in great shape. And then we got the greatest hits tour, man. Like, he's a 53-year-old man. What do people expect? You're not going to get The Undertaker to come out there and do the 25-minute classic he did with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25, or, the match he had at 27 or 28 with Triple H, or the match he had at 21 with Orton. You're not going to, or the 29 match with Punk. You're not going to get that. The Undertaker's a 53-year-old man. Father Time catches up with you. But I think them doing this tells us, hey, we can still have The Undertaker for another few WrestleManias if we want. The Undertaker can come out. He can do his greatest hits. He can do that long walk entrance that we all love with the music and the purple lighting. He can do a choke slam. He can do the sit-up. He can do the old school tombstone, send everyone home happy. I loved it. I loved it for the fact of, I've never been a big John Cena fan, but it shows how much respect The Undertaker garners, that John Cena is willing to, hey, you could squash me in 2 minutes and 45 seconds. The Undertaker's entrance was longer than the match. But it's The Undertaker, and it's WrestleMania. And I think it was a good deal that, New Orleans is where the streak ended. You know what? Get his win back. He deserves that. And he's, to me, I know a lot of people think that Andre the Giant's the best big man, but, I wasn't alive for most of Andre's run. To me, I've been alive the entire time, and The Undertaker is that. The Undertaker is the best big man there's ever been, in my opinion. He can do so much. He's unbelievable, character, everything about that. It's The Undertaker. And anybody that didn't like that segment, dude, I don't get why not. It's The Undertaker. The Undertaker can do whatever the hell he wants. He's earned that respect. He's been in the business since 1990. I was 1 year old when The Undertaker debuted. He can do whatever he wants. He's The Undertaker. So if he comes out and he squashes John Cena in 2 minutes and 45 seconds, who cares? He's 53 years old. He can't do a full 15, 20-minute match. Who cares? It's The Undertaker. You get to see him. You get to see do his greatest hits, and send everybody home happy. That's awesome. All right. And there's a lot other things to talk about from the Mania card. The Nia Jax, the Braun Strowman teaming with a 10-year-old, the AJ Shinsuke thing, which I'll get into that here in a little bit. But, I don't want to spend all that time. But I do want to spend a little bit of time here talking about the main event between Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. And it was a good match, but I think a lot of people knew that it was going to get shit on. It was shocking that the ending that Brock beat Roman. I think a lot has come out now on the dirt sheets that possibly, this greatest Royal Rumble in Saudi Arabia that they're having here in 2 weeks from Friday, Roman's going to win it there because it's not going to be a North American crowd. They'll cheer Roman for him winning. And there's a lot that Brock signed a short-term deal, that he signed a long-term deal, such and such. But I think that's a lot where it comes from, that they knew that Roman was going to get booed. And you could see the crowd just did not give a shit about this match. I've heard reports and said from people that were there that people were playing with beach balls and chanting CM Punk's name, chanting Michael Cole's name. They weren't interested in the match. And I think Roman's a great talent in the ring, and I've never been really fond of his character, and I could go either way with Brock. It just didn't seem like that this main event was going to satisfy any of the fans' needs. You have Brock win, but he's still, a part-time champion. Secondly, Roman nobody likes, so you're going to have him win the championship. So it really was, back and forth, who should win. And people took a crap on it. It was pretty close to a Brock Lesnar Goldberg WrestleMania 20 where the fans just completely shit on the match. And they had blood and they had all this. And there's the reports that after the match, Brock came back and threw the title and got in Vince's face and everything like that. I don't want to spend the whole podcast talking about this because it's been talked to death by everybody about the Roman Reigns thing of what's this guy got to do to get over. And, then they had the Monday segment where, sorry, again there, where Samoa Joe came out and just completely cut his balls off, basically, with the promo. I'm not really sure where they're going. I've never seen in WWE history where they've tried to push somebody, and I wouldn't call it a failed experiment, but it's definitely unique because, even with John Cena, it wasn't like this. And it's just so interesting to me is I could take it or leave it with the Roman situation. But, I don't know if they're going to move off of him. I don't see that happening. I have more feeling that he's going to win in Saudi Arabia for the fact of it's going to be a pro-Roman crowd, and Vince is a smart man and knows that if he wants to coronate this guy as the next superstar of the company, that's where you need to do it. So it's interesting to me. I really don't know where I'm going. It was one of the more weirder main events in that it was a really good match when you look at it. But the crowd response and the response on social media, people just do not like Roman Reigns. And I almost feel bad for the guy in a sense that, he's getting toyed around like this. He's getting sent out there, night after night and getting a lot of boos, and people just don't want any part to do with him. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Brock, what happens with Roman on that Greatest Royal Rumble that's coming up here in a couple of weeks. Maybe I'll do a little preview show about that, but interesting. It was interesting. Overall, though, I would give the WrestleMania a solid A to A minus. I thought everything for a 7-hour show, I felt like it didn't drag. I felt like they kept it moving, not a lot of video packages, straight to the action, boom, boom, in your face. It was really good, and some matches had to be cut for length of time, but hey, that's going to happen when you have that many matches and you have a 7-hour pay-per-view. But I thought it was really good. I would definitely put it in there, top 5 WrestleMania. I'd put it on the lines there with, WrestleMania 19, which I think is the best of all time, 31. I'd put it in there with 17. I'd put it in there with, like, WrestleMania, 5, 6, some of the bigger time WrestleManias of all time. All right, so one of the things now I want to wrap up here in the last few minutes and talk about is the Monday after Raw and the SmackDown that was last night after WrestleMania. Couple of interesting things happened. A lot of NXT. The one thing that I thought was a little weird was the NXT call-ups. There were significantly more call-ups on Raw than there were SmackDown. SmackDown only got basically 2. They got the iconic duo Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, while Raw got Ember Moon, the Authors of Pain, No Way Jose. They got significantly more call-ups, and they got more returns. They got Jeff Hardy, the single star, and they got Bobby Lashley. So I felt that was a little almost unbalanced in a way, because how come Raw, Raw is always seen as the A show. I get that. Why did they get so many call-ups and SmackDown got so few? SmackDown did have a big moment, but I think that the NXT call-ups were solid. I'm excited to see Ember Moon. I think she's really good. Authors of Pain is going to be interesting because it looks like they've ditched Paul Ellering because he doesn't want the schedule. So it'll be interesting because Paul Ellering was majorly part of the act in NXT. Excited to see how they play with No Way Jose. But mostly, the guy I'm most excited for was Bobby Lashley. I thought Lashley had it all his first go-around. I think they kind of dropped the ball. He wasn't ready. Maybe he wasn't mature enough. But I am excited for Bobby Lashley. Now he's a guy that went out, made a name for himself in pro wrestling, but almost made himself a name for it in MMA, in Bellator. I want to see that Lashley-Brock match, in a way that most of the locker room is probably intimidated by Brock Lesnar. Bobby Lashley's not going to be. Bobby Lashley is going to bring it to Brock because Bobby Lashley ain't scared. He knows how to fight. I listen to SiriusXM Busted Open all the time, and Mark Henry yesterday had the best story I've ever heard about probably anybody in a long time. He said that at the Olympic Training Center, he would work out there. Well, Bobby Lashley worked out there too, and Bobby went to an ATM, and a guy tried to rob him, put a gun up at gunpoint, and Bobby kicked the shit out of him. Bobby Lashley beat the shit out of a guy with a gun. Brock's not going to bring a gun into the ring. Bobby Lashley's going to have no problem with Brock. So I think that match is money. I don't know, depending on the details of Brock's deal, if we're going to see that match, but I would love to see that match between Bobby and Brock would be amazing. I think Bobby's going to get a really big push and be a big star this go-around with WWE. And the last couple things I want to kind of wrap up with is the big moment that they had last night on SmackDown with the Carmella cash-in. I think a lot of people saw this coming. The iconic duo debuted, and they beat down Charlotte, and then Carmella came with the Money in the Bank briefcase, and she cashed it right in and became the new SmackDown Women's Champion, and the crowd popped, everything like that. It's going to be interesting, Carmella as champion, because her work rate is nowhere near that of a Charlotte, a Sasha, an Asuka, a Bayley, Becky Lynch, Natalya. But she has a lot more character depth than some of those girls. So, and you got to think about WWE is all about character and stories. When you compare, Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior, they're not the greatest workers, but they had character and they got over that way, And we live in a different time in 2018 where a lot of fans are going to, judge you on your work rate. So it's going to be interesting to see how she goes with the title reign. I think a lot of rumors on the Superstar shakeup next week, whereas we're going to see Asuka come over and be the main challenger for that title. And that's what I mean by Asuka's still going to get her title reign. She didn't get it at WrestleMania. She's going to be over there and have the opportunity to grab that title from Carmella, I think. I think that's the big matchup that they're going to go to. Carmella, I don't see having a long run. I think Asuka's eventually going to get it, here in the next 2-3 months. But I think that's the way they're going with that. And the other big thing was the Shinsuke heel turn. That happened at Mania, where he gave AJ the low blow. Last night on SmackDown, he interfered in the AJ Styles Daniel Bryan match, and once again gave AJ a low blow. He had a great promo too, where they asked him why did he do that to AJ at WrestleMania, and he said no speak of English. I thought that was great. He looked so much more comfortable as a heel, and I'm really excited for that, to see where they go. And the last little thing I want to wrap up is the Superstar Shakeup is next week. And I always like this time because it's, it's kind of like a draft. Who's going to go to Raw, who's going to go to SmackDown. I really couldn't call who. I think some of the big names, I think we're going to see Asuka go to SmackDown. I think that's pretty evident. I think it's pretty evident we're going to see Charlotte on Raw because that's where Ronda is. And Charlotte just dropped the title to Carmella. I think we're also going to see, I think Finn and the Balor Club need to come over to SmackDown. That's a big time deal. I think Finn can work with AJ. He can work with Shinsuke. He can get that demon character going. I think that's much better of what he needs to be able to do and to be that big time star and main eventer that they need. But I'm very intrigued. There's a lot of things they can do. There's a lot of superstars out there that need this shakeup, really, hopefully, to get themselves in a better position. So I'm interested to see what they do. I couldn't call, the only two that I really would for sure call is Charlotte going to Raw and Asuka coming to SmackDown. Me personally, I'd love to see Finn on SmackDown. That's just me. There's been some rumblings that Daniel Bryan may be going to Raw. I don't know. But, really those are the only two. Asuka and Charlotte I can for sure call, and I'd love to see Finn on SmackDown. But, it was a great WrestleMania weekend. It was hard not being there. I went for 31. I didn't go for 32 or 33. I really wanted to go this year being in New Orleans because I've been to New Orleans before and it's a blast. So I was really hoping to go this year. But next year, I've got the money saved already. When the travel packages go on sale, I definitely will be going there. Hopefully, could grab some cool interviews for you guys and some cool stuff. Once again, want to thank Official Wrestling 316 on Twitter for being my official correspondents out there in New Orleans all weekend. Blessed you guys could send me stuff that I could keep everybody informed on what was going on WrestleMania weekend down there in New Orleans. Once again, I want to thank everybody for listening to the podcast. Make sure you go follow on social media at Twitter, which is Nick's R&W Podcast, the Instagram Rock and Wrestling Podcast, Gmail Rock and Wrestling Podcast at gmail.com, Facebook Nick's Rock and Wrestling Podcast, all that good stuff. Go get your official t-shirts, help a brother out. Go to prowrestlingtees.com/Rock and Wrestling Podcast store. You get yourself a t-shirt, a long sleeve shirt, tank top. Summer's coming up. You want to show those guns off. Nothing better to do it than the official Rock and Wrestling Podcast tank top. Definitely want to do that. So, next week, gonna have a big guest indeed. Former WWE superstar JTG from the Tag Team Crime Time. I'm gonna be going down to the APW show in the Bay Area this weekend to grab an interview with him, as well as I'll be grabbing an interview with another young up and comer in the business that will be the following week. Also have Some Fear None coming up in the next couple of weeks. The great rock and roll band here in Sacramento, California. Got some big guests coming up. But next week will be JTG from the Tag Team Crime Time, former WWE superstar, now on the independent scene. Gonna love for you guys to hear this interview. Make sure you follow on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Gmail. Go over to Pro Wrestling Tees. Get yourself a t-shirt. Help a brother out. Share this podcast wherever you can. I will see you guys next week. Peace.